Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Alyssa, and this channel is called The Self Pursuit, covering the topics of the law of attraction, self-empowerment, and conquering limiting self-beliefs. So if any of that interests you, go ahead and throw a dash of love on that subscribe button and hit that bell icon so that you can be updated for new videos. This video, however, if you've read the title, is going to be a little bit different from what I normally talk about. Upon hearing about the death of George Floyd a couple weeks ago and in the wake of all the protests, I honestly didn't think that it was a subject that I had many grounds to cover publicly. Every time something like this has happened over the last few years, of course, I've had passionate private conversations with family and friends about it and just sort of thought that that's where my 2 cents belonged, since I can't do much about these things besides get worked up and feel sick about what I can't change in this world. And a subscriber actually commented on one of my videos last week, and he suggested that I do say something about it, and he made an excellent point as to why. Because I replied to his comment, just letting him know that this channel is for promoting positivity and that my goal is to help people with the issues that I discuss. And he was incredibly polite about it, and he didn't want to offend me, which he didn't. But he made a great point, saying that because I do have this platform, that I can and should let my voice be heard from time to time regarding these types of issues, and just kind of give a different perspective about it. And when I started this journey of manifestation or law of attraction, whatever you want to call it, one of the first things that I did in order to promote positivity in my own life was to stop watching the news. I realized that when I did watch the news and hear about all of these horrible things that have been going down the last few years, because it got me so worked up every time, I realized that it was affecting my daily life because I'm so passionate about it, so I would get worked up. So when I started this channel, I didn't even have it in my head that I would be using my voice for these types of things or talking about current events. But back to the point, it does make sense that I do use my voice to put in my 2 cents for things like this because I get passionate about it. That doesn't mean I have to change the premise of my channel, but I do have things to say and some pretty unique perspectives. And I don't want to be the type to be seemingly ignorant or to turn a blind eye to what's happening in the world. So I'll add my input on this and my own take on what's going on right now, and try to shine a little perspective on it, and then I'll go ahead and carry on with all that fun law of attraction stuff. So I thought this was a really great time to go into the topic of empathy, which is actually a video that I've been wanting to do for a while, but for some reason I've been struggling to find a good, segue into that topic. So I think that there was a reason that I waited to do this video, and I'm grateful that I did. So if you don't know what empathy is, it's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So when someone's happy, angry, distraught, etc., an empath, empath just sounds more natural to me. An empath is easily able to understand what that person is going through and put themselves in their position and even match their emotions. And I've always been an empath and had to learn the hard way that not everybody is. Now, that being said, let's go into Black Lives Matter, because there are 2 very contradicting sides to this movement. And if you find yourself getting offended by Black Lives Matter, I invite you to ask yourself why. Hashtag all lives matter. Of course they do. We all know that each life absolutely matters and is undoubtedly valuable. But let's focus on these particular lives for now, okay? Yes, all of our ancestors or family members or whomever have suffered in some way, and I'm not getting into all racial injustice. I'm just focusing on Black Lives Matter. And just to clear the air, I'm not here to bash anybody, including the police. There are incredible police officers who show up every single day to serve and protect, and they do just that. So they deserve our respect. And I also don't condone the violent riots that are going on. Protesting is one thing, but harming innocent people to take your stand is just wrong on all fronts. So now that that's out of the way, empathy. I have a question. Who learned about their family history or ancestry as a kid or even as an adult and got super excited about it? I know I was excited to learn about mine. It's not perfect, but I can say that I'm proud of my heritage. And there were times throughout my life, because I'm such a strong empath, that I started thinking about other people's family history, because we're all so unique and culturally different that just fascinates me. So humor me for a sec and imagine being a kid and learning that the reason you're here today is because your ancestors were stolen from their homes to be taken to other continents, to be beaten, starved, sold, and brutally enslaved for centuries. Imagine learning that one of your grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents, whatever, were beaten, humiliated, and hanged from a tree to die in front of their entire family on the plantation where they had been enslaved for years. Now imagine learning about those relatives or ancestors being granted freedom just to be either continuously enslaved or thrown out on their asses to figure out where to live, what to do, since they still had zero rights. They couldn't find decent work, decent homes. They had to constantly watch their backs because they were so hated by those who ultimately brought them here. So they have to settle for the shittiest bits of real estate, find ways to make some sort of living to feed themselves while still constantly being harassed by people on the street, being told to go back to Africa, and being personally insulted for what they look like or where they came from. Being told they can't use certain restrooms or drinking fountains or schools or go into certain stores. They can't live in nice neighborhoods. And this is just scratching the surface of what was taught in some schools, because schools really only teach so much about slavery and civil rights, if at all. But their lives were completely steered by those who initially kidnapped them and allowed this cruelty to go on for so long. If you haven't heard the tragic story of Emmett Till, you'll probably recognize his photo if you look him up. He's the 14-year-old boy who was brutally beaten and lynched by a couple of white men because he was accused of looking at a white woman, which offended her. That's it. The two men were found not guilty, of course, and even directly admitted that they killed Emmett. And this was in 1955, you guys. There are people who are still alive who were around for that. People who may have condoned what happened and went on to have children of their own, instilling similar beliefs into them, passing it along throughout the generations, because you can't deny that racism is still very much alive. We have members of the frickin' KKK popping up out of the woodwork in 2020. It is 2020. There's people who say that we all have equal opportunities in life now because all of that's history and it's all over, right? And I can see how in the grand scheme of things, how and why people would automatically just assume this. But those people also need to see that every generation of African Americans in this country has suffered cruelty. From the time they were brought here up until now, they have not been treated like the majority of us, not even close. You can deny it all you want. If you haven't seen the documentary called 13th, it's on Netflix, and I strongly urge that you watch it. It covers the facts of racial inequality dating back from slavery through today, and it intricately takes you through the generations and clearly points out and analyzes what this country has been like for the Black community, and it's a pretty harsh reality. Again, school teaches very little about this. Even post-segregation, politicians, the media, and law enforcement, etc., did everything they could to paint the Black community as a dangerous one and one to be feared. And it worked. And it's still working. And people who shouldn't be dying are as a result of that. And again, I'm not here to shame the police or anything. A ton of them are here to help us. But there are people who allow their instilled fear or anger towards a person or community to make certain rash or horrible decisions for them. And some of those people happen to wear a badge and carry a weapon. Now, I won't get into particular circumstances, but we can all agree that there's a lot of people in law enforcement who do not deserve that title. And again, we can't deny that there are racists that live among us, referring back to the frickin' KKK of the year 2020. But on the other side of things, you also need to understand that the people who are offended by the movement, simply don't know all or any of what I just went over. Some don't even know a fraction of it, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. There's a serious generational education gap that's affecting the way we all live among each other every single day. And I remember learning about slavery, civil rights, etc., and being fascinated by that part of history simply because it's so unbelievable that it happened. And I thought it was so important to learn about it so that we can reverse that treatment of people or not go back to it. Well, I know I was only taught so much in school, and this generation is barely getting these facts. So what makes us think that people who went to school in the 60s, 70s, or even the 80s would get any of these details? So it's not even ignorance, really. I can't even figure out a word for it. But a lot of that stuff was still pretty fresh and controversial during those times, so no one taught it. Therefore, the Black community never got that empathy from anyone because they were so feared because of the false picture that was painted of them. So there's people who have just been in a bubble, only acknowledging what they were taught or what they were exposed to. There really are different worlds that exist for every one of us, and I think there's a serious disconnect in the knowledge of that. So again, yes, all lives matter, of course, but not all lives had to live the racial injustices that have plagued the Black community for centuries. It continues to ripple in through the generations, and denying that is pretty harmful. I'm an empath, but I have trouble imagining learning about my family history, knowing that most or all of them suffered that constant brutality for so long for no reason other than pure hate and fear. And then to turn on my TV in the year 2020 and see innocent Black lives regularly destroyed and taken for no reason, seeing little to zero justice, to hear that lynchings are still a thing, and that the KKK and frickin' neo-Nazis are still getting together to discuss bringing more of that brutality back. That is terrifying. But I don't even have to fear that. Ask yourself if you have to fear that. If you don't, think of other people who sit there and have to fear that every single day. So yes, again, in the grand scheme, all of our lives matter, okay? But this community started a movement to bring to light all of these injustices. Emmett Till and his family never got justice. Their enslaved ancestors never got justice. And today, they're still not seeing justice, and they're just standing up for what they believe in. They don't want to see their community suffer anymore. So again, I invite you to ask yourself why this movement offends you. Because it's Black Lives Matter and that doesn't include you? Well, you're not the only one with a voice. So can you at least respect why they're using their voices through this movement? Show some empathy. See the other side of it. And I don't want to offend anyone, but I'm honestly just giving my perspective on why this movement is so important. But I think it's important because there's a group of people who are exhausted and sad and angry that they haven't been treated right. And again, not all cops are bad, not all protesters are bad. But if it were your family, your community, your history, I'm sure you'd want the respect of at least letting your voice be heard about it. Again, I know this was different and kind of long, and I didn't mean to disrespect anyone. I really just think it's so important to practice empathy during a time like this when we're so separated, so divided. We have to stop this stubbornness. Yes, all lives matter, but Black Lives Matter. That is the movement. Respect the movement. So that is all I have for today. Sorry, again, I know I get passionate. And again, I know it was a different video from what I'm used to doing, but I did just want to throw my voice out there, just give some perspective. Hopefully it was helpful to some people. I mean, zero disrespect. I think it's just really important to practice empathy during a time like this and see both sides. We need to set our stubbornness aside. We're so divided, and we just have to start seeing perspective, each other's points. We have to empathize with each other. So that was my 2, 3, or 4 cents on what's happening in the world today. Again, next video, I'm going to be getting back into the law of attraction stuff, so please stay tuned. I'll be posting another Ho'oponopono video about healing your relationship with money and success. as requested by another subscriber. But again, thank you so much for all watching this today. I really appreciate it. And as always, please be safe, much love, and I'll see you next time.